Hi there, how's it going? Darren Bennett here for Protopilot, and today we're going to look at building a tab bar with nested components inside of Protopie. In this tutorial we're going to build a reusable tab bar component that you can use in your prototypes. One of the most powerful features of Protopie is the ability to build fully portable and interactive UI components. We're going to make use of nested components, SVG icons and layout constraints to build out this tab bar UI component. It's going to be self-contained and flexible enough for you to reuse in any future project. Let's just have a quick look at exactly what we're going to build over here. We can see I've got a tab bar with 4 tab items on it, and when we tab through these, our prototypes is just kind of switching from one scene to another, so we're using scenes within Protopie to create this tab bar. So without further ado, let's kind of get into it. So the first thing we're going to do is, if you just create a new prototype file, new Protopie file. I've just got an untitled file here, just using the Google Pixel 4. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to import our SVG icons. Now I'm just using icons from a free website called Feather Icons. Let me just show that to you. So this is the site. So there's a whole load of icons here. So I just downloaded four of these. So the ones I downloaded was Home, Activity, Bell, and Settings. So just download those onto your computer, and we're going to import those in using the image import. And you can shift select to select them all and import them all in one go. So we're just going to do that and click open. Now currently there's a bug in Protopie which causes the icons to import at a smaller size. So let's fix that. Taking each icon in turn, we're going to make those 24 pixels. So let's just make sure you've got it should be on by default, but the lock icon will just constrain the aspect ratio, so we make sure that we don't squish our icons. So we're just going to type 24 in. For settings, we're just going to go through these, do each one. Okay. So if we then, the next thing we need to do, we want to be able to control the color of these icons inside of Protopie itself. So you can see at the moment, I don't really have access to that. So I need to take one more step, which is to use this convert to shape option. So we're just going to click that for each icon. And you can see instantly the colors changed. Okay, so we've got these 4 icons, and you can see now the border, or the fill in the border. These icons are just using a border, so the border is exposed, so we can change the color of those. I'm going to use just a blue color. You can use any color you want, absolutely fine. Just going to copy that, apply this to the others. Okay, and I'm just going to loosely organize these in the order I want them to be. So we've got Home, we've got this activity icon. We're going to use the bell icon to represent kind of like notifications. And then finally we've got this cog, which we're going to use for settings. Okay, so we're now going to kind of create the tab. So I'm just going to create a rectangle. So this is going to be the background of my tab. So I'm going to set this height to 56 pixels. And I want the width to be exactly 1/4 of the width of my prototype. So there's a little shortcut you can do by just typing a percentage in the input field, and that's going to work out exactly 25% of the width of the screen, which in this case is 98.25. So I'm just going to take this rectangle, I'm just going to stick that in the corner, in the bottom left hand corner, and I'm just going to organize it just under home. I'm also just going to reorganize the order of these. I like to have the order of the layers to kind of reflect visually, so left to right, home, settings. I'm just going to make that the same. Then I'm going to select home and that rectangle, and I'm just going to center these. So there's two ways you can do this. I could either just pull this down, just kind of align the crosshairs, but if that's not working, it doesn't always work exactly, we can also just shift select, and you can see both of these are selected, and I can use these alignment tools. So I'm just going to align to center and align to middle. Okay, looks like it was already centered. Keeping these two selected, I'm now going to turn these into our first component. So there's two ways you can do this. You can hit the component button here on the toolbar, or you can select Control and choose Convert to Component from the flyout menu. So let's do that. And we've now got our first component. So let's have a quick look into our components panel, so you can see our first component is here. So let's just double click on that to open it. And we're just going to rename, again by double clicking, rename this component tab home. Okay, so if I twizzle down this disclosure triangle, you can see I've kind of got this special group, like my component container with the lightning bolt in it, and inside I've got my icon and I've got this rectangle. Now I actually don't need this rectangle anymore because I can apply a color to the group itself. So I'm just going to delete the rectangle, and then I'm going to select the group or the component container, and I'm just going to change the fill color. Again, you can choose any color you want. I'm going to do like this light grey color. Make sure the fill percentage is 100, otherwise your color won't show up. And you can see the light grey color now. Cool. Now the second thing I want to do, I want to make sure this this whole tab bar is flexible, so it will fit any width, any size prototype. So I just need to set some constraints. So within Protopie, you've got some basic constraints which are broken down into these three areas. So you've got the kind of pinning constraints, and then you've got the fixed width and the fixed height constraints. So what we want to do is with tab home selected, we're going to remove all of the constraints. We don't want any constraints at all. And then for the icon itself, we want to keep the fixed width and the fixed height because we don't want our icon to change shape, to get squished or to get extended. But we do want to remove the pin constraints also. And if we just have a quick look, just pull that out, you can see that's now nicely flexible. Okay, so let's hit back. And we're just going to, we need to create the other three components. So let's just go into here, and we're just going to duplicate this tab 3 more times. Okay, and let's just rename these, and we're going to call them tab activity, tab notifications, and finally tab settings. Okay, so let's just go back to our scene, and we're going to copy our first icon. So our activity icon was going to go to tab activity, and we're going to paste this icon in. Just get that in the correct position, and we can now remove that home, and we just need to make sure that our pin constraints are removed as well. Okay, go back to our scene, get our next icon, get the bell icon, and we're going to bring that into the notifications tab. And again, remove the pin constraints. And then finally, we're going to do the settings. Okay, let's just remove, so we can remove everything from the current scene now. And if we look in here, we've now got our 4 tabs, all flexible, and we're ready to move on and create the tab bar. So next we want to create the tab bar that the tabs will nest inside. This will give us a single tab bar component that we can then reuse. So let's go to our components panel and drag out our 4 tab items, place them at the bottom of the screen. So just get them, they should kind of snap. Okay, so you've now got the 4 tab copies. So we call these instances because effectively we've got the master component, and these copies or instances are copies of that component. You can obviously have many copies, and with the master component you can then make changes to the master component, which will then be reflected in all the copies that you've got out in your prototype. Okay, we're going to select all of the layers now, and we're going to make this a component. So I'll use the component button this time, and we're going to name this tab bar. And we need to rename the component in the components panel as well. And let's open this up by double clicking on it. I'm just going to remove these ones because it's an instance. Prototype gives it a number 1 by default. There you go, that's a bit neater. And we can see, I don't know if you can see this, there's like a gap, like a little line. So even though these are accurately placed, you get some, because they're kind of not on a whole pixel. We saw this is like the size is 98.25. You can get some slight rendering issues. So we're just going to fix that by selecting the container tab bar, and we're going to change the fill color of this to the same color, F1, F1, F1. And remembering to make the fill percentage 100%. And that's just fixed that, let's got rid of that little white line. Okay, so now we have a fully constructed tab bar, We can see it over here on the preview. You can see that it does absolutely nothing, but it's fully flexible. So we can use this on prototypes with different sizes. And next up, we're going to be setting up the tab item states. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do is we're going to set up our 4 scenes. So we're just going to come into the scenes panel here, and we're going to, again, just Command D Mac, Control D Windows, the select scene 1, and just duplicate that 3 more times. So we've got 4 scenes, and we're just going to rename these to match our tabs. So home, activity, notifications, and settings. Next, we want to set the triggers inside of the tab bar so that when each tab is tapped, the prototype navigates to the correct scene. So first, let's add a title on each scene so we know the navigation is working properly. So just go to the text tool and choose text. So we get this text label. So we're actually on the settings. So let's just type settings. And you can style this however you want. I'm just going to give it some quick styling. Looks good. Just going to copy that. So this is notifications. Activity. And finally home. Cool. So now we know with the label that we know that it's actually working as we navigate from tab to tab. Okay, so we now need to add the actual navigation responses. So let's go into the components panel and open up the tab bar component. And we're going to add a jump response, which is what we use to navigate from scene to scene. So, and let's just organize these in the correct order. Okay, so if we select the first tab, tab home, we're going to add a trigger, tap. And then under that, we're going to add jump response. And for the jump response, we just need to tell it what scene we want to jump to. So this is home, so we want to jump to the home scene. Okay, so we need to do the next one. Tap, jump, activity. You can also copy these, so we can select this and copy, paste, and then just change the tab here. And then the final one, settings, jump to settings. You can also, you can customize the names of these triggers just by double clicking in. So we'll call that home, just to make it a little bit clearer. It's good to make your prototype as self-documenting as you can. Especially with prototype, because the prototypes, what I call the interaction stack, which is all this stuff down here can get quite complex as you're building things out. So it'll serve you well if you can name things, and it will help you keep track. Okay, so we've added all the jump responses. So before we go any further, we need to talk about messages. So messages are the mechanism we use to trigger actions within components and scenes. So you can send any text messages you like. You can literally type anything you want them to be. It's essential that it's something unique, because effectively we're using messages to match. So we're matching one message from one part of your prototype to the same message in another part of your prototype. So we need to make sure they match. There are, however, some things to remember with messages. Number one, messages are case sensitive. So home in capitals and home in lowercase are actually two different messages. Messages need to be unique because, like I said, they need to be matched. So you don't want the same message twice, connecting to two different things. And finally, messages should be clear and descriptive, and that's just really for your own sake. And again, going back to that self-documentation kind of approach that I mentioned earlier. So I use a special format for all of my messages, which I borrow from programming. I type them all in caps and use underscores to separate words. So, for example, my message would be my underscore message. You can, of course, use any format you like, whatever works for you, but this is the way I do it. So in case of our tab bar, we're going to use messages to trigger the selected states. So let's set that up now. So let's navigate. So we're already here so make sure you're on the home scene. And we're going to add a start trigger. And start trigger is basically a trigger which will trigger when the scene loads. So it's kind of you can kind of think of it a bit as a system-based trigger. So when this scene loads, start's going to fire, and any response we've got inside start's going to run. So we're going to add a send response. And we're going to leave it at send to current scene. And we're going to put in a message, home selected. And that's all we really need to trigger the tab. Just a little word about send to current scene. So there are a few other kind of options you'll see more inside of components, but basically this message is going to be sent to the current scene, and we're also going to use that same destination to pick up the message from inside of the component, which we'll see in a minute. Before we do that though, let's just go through again to our scenes and add our start triggers. So we can copy this and we can paste that onto our next scene. Again, we just need to change the message. So this will be activity. Then we've got notifications. And finally, settings. Okay, so the final bit we need to do, so we've now got it working so that it will jump from scene to scene, but we haven't actually made any visual changes inside of our tab bar items. So we're gonna do that now to make them look like they're active. So let's go back into our components panel and let's double click on tab home. and we're going to add a receive trigger. So this is the other half of the kind of the way we talk to components. So we've set our send response, which is going to send that message into our current scene, and we're going to send a receive trigger to pick up that same message. And again, we're going to look at the same place. So you can see here, there's a few different options, but all we need to do is receive from current scene, because that's where our message is going to be sent. Okay, that's good. And then we're going to, we need to tell it what message we want to receive. So for this one, this is home. So we want to receive, we're looking for the home selected message. So we just need to type that in here. And then we're going to add our responses. So to change the actual visual appearance of the tab. So we're going to add a color response. And we're going to select our tab home container, and we're going to change the fill color, and again we're going to use that same blue, so 228BE6, making sure we set the fill to 100, otherwise it won't show up. So that's our first color response, which is going to change the background color of our tab. But we obviously need to change the color of the icon as well. So we're just going to select our icon here and then add a second color response. Now on this icon, it's actually the border that's got the color, not the fill, just the way this particular icon has been drawn. So we need to check border, and we're going to make this white, which is all the Fs. And again, we need to make sure the percentage fill is 100%. Okay, so we need to repeat this for the other tab. So again, we can just copy this whole stack, and we're just going to repeat this. Just as a note, if you see anything that's orange inside your interaction stack, then that means that there's a missing value or something's not going to be working. You get this little orange dot as well, and this little tooltip. So this first bit's fine. We just need to change, actually this is fine as well. This just picks this up fine. So we just need to change this to the icon activity. That's good. And then again, we need to change our messages as well, otherwise it will point to the wrong thing. So this is the notifications, all in uppercase. Let me just double check activity. Yeah. Okay. And then finally, settings. Cool. Okay, so let's return back to the home scene just by double clicking it, and we can have a look over at our preview window here, and if we tab through, we can see we have a working tab bar. We can see that the background color is changing based on the color responses we added, and we can see our message is changing, which proves that we're actually jumping from scene to scene. Okay, so we've now completed the building of a reusable tab component within ProtoPie. You can now copy and paste this across your prototypes. The only extra work you'll need to do is copy the start interaction group across as well, to obviously make it work. And that's, again, you can simply copy this and you can paste between files as simply as we've been pasting things around this particular prototype. So there's a lot more to explore with components, but hopefully you can see how useful they are and how they can become a basis of you having the ability to create your user interface in a reusable way. So I hope it's been useful for you, and hopefully you'll be able to catch the next video. See you later.